Her phone wouldn't stop ringing. 23 missed calls, all from the same number. The same number that had blocked her just 4 days ago after calling her an imbecile in front of his colleagues and abandoning her at an exclusive resort in the Maldives, leaving her with a $15,000 bill and a shattered marriage. She stared at Marcus Hartwell's name flashing across her screen, her coffee growing cold in her trembling hands. The morning sun streamed through her Chicago apartment window, but all she could see was the terror in his voice from the last voicemail he'd left at 4 a.m. "Hazel, please. You have to call me back. Something's happening. Something's very wrong. The investigations, the charges. How did you? Please, I'm begging you." She smiled and let it go to voicemail again. After all, a woman like her should be grateful for the entertainment. But how did she go from being the abandoned wife to the one holding all the cards? How did 4 days transform her from a woman crying alone on a tropical beach into someone who could make Marcus Hartwell, the man who thought he was untouchable, beg for mercy? The answer lies in what happened that night at the Sunset Beach Bar in the Maldives. And more importantly, what she discovered about the man she had married. Some secrets are buried so deep that when they finally surface, they don't just hurt, they destroy everything in their path. And Marcus Hartwell was about to learn that the quiet, supposedly simple woman he discarded so carelessly had been hiding secrets of her own. Before we continue, please write in the comment which country you are watching this video. We love knowing where our global family is tuning in from. And if this is your first time on this channel, please subscribe. Your support helps us bring even more epic revenge tales to life. Enjoy listening. 4 days earlier, she sat across from Marcus at the Sunset Beach Bar of their luxury resort in the Maldives, watching the sun paint the Indian Ocean in shades of gold and crimson. It was their 3rd wedding anniversary, and this trip had been her idea, a chance to reconnect after months of growing distance in their marriage. The resort was breathtaking, with overwater bungalows stretching into crystal-clear lagoons and powder-soft beaches that looked like they belonged in a magazine. "This is beautiful," she said, reaching across the table to touch his hand. "I'm so glad we came." Marcus barely glanced up from his phone, where he was reviewing emails from his investment firm. His dark hair was perfectly styled despite the tropical humidity, and his expensive linen shirt remained crisp even in the evening heat. "It's fine, Hazel. Though I still think Aspen would have been more practical. At least there I could have gotten some skiing in." She felt the familiar sting of his indifference, but pushed it down. Marcus had been under tremendous pressure at work lately, or so he told her. His promotion to partner at Hartwell & Associates had brought new responsibilities and demands. She understood pressure. She worked 60-hour weeks at Northwestern Memorial Hospital as a trauma nurse, saving lives in one of Chicago's busiest emergency departments. "Marcus, can you put the phone away? It's our anniversary." She wore a flowing white sundress she'd bought specifically for this trip, her auburn hair catching the last rays of sunlight. She'd spent careful attention on her appearance tonight, hoping to recapture some of the magic they'd once shared. "The markets don't stop for anniversaries, Hazel. Some of us have responsibilities that extend beyond." He stopped himself, but the implication hung in the air like the humid ocean breeze. Beyond what? Beyond her job saving lives? Beyond their marriage? She wanted to ask, but before she could speak, she heard familiar voices approaching their table. Well, look what the tide washed up." She turned to see 3 men walking toward them across the resort's elegant deck. She recognized them immediately. Jake Morrison, Marcus's college roommate who now worked as a senior analyst at the firm, with his perpetually tanned face and expensive watch collection. Trevor Banks, another partner whose laugh was always a little too loud and whose jokes were always a little too cruel. And Ryan Mitchell, the compliance officer who had never remembered her name despite meeting her at countless firm events over the past 3 years. "Guys," Marcus's entire demeanor changed. His face lit up like someone had plugged him into an electrical outlet, and he pocketed his phone for the first time all evening. "What are you doing here?" "Corporate retreat," Jake said, gesturing broadly at the resort around them. The firm booked the entire North Wing for the week. Client entertainment and strategic planning. His eyes barely acknowledged her presence as he spoke. She felt her heart sink. This was supposed to be their romantic getaway, their chance to reconnect away from the pressures of Chicago. Now it was just another work event. "Mind if we join you for drinks?" Trevor asked. already pulling out chairs before anyone could object. The sunset view from here is incredible. She wanted to say yes, she minded. This was supposed to be their anniversary dinner, their time together. But Marcus was already rearranging seating before she could speak. Of course. Hazel, you remember the guys from the firm? Hi, she said softly, managing a small wave. It's nice to see you all again. Trevor nodded absently while scrolling through his phone. Ryan looked right through her, as if she were part of the furniture. Jake at least had the courtesy to smirk. The next 2 hours were torture. They talked about market volatility, client portfolios, and regulatory changes. They discussed people she didn't know and deals she couldn't follow. Every time she tried to contribute to the conversation, one of them would interrupt or change the subject entirely. Marcus laughed at their jokes. Jokes that weren't funny. Jokes that were sometimes cruel. Jokes that made her feel smaller and more invisible with each passing minute. So Marcus, Trevor said, leaning back in his chair and gesturing toward her with his gin and tonic. When are you going to upgrade? The conversation stopped. Even the distant sound of waves seemed to quiet. Marcus's glass paused halfway to his lips. What do you mean? Marcus's voice was carefully neutral. Come on, man. Jake jumped in, his voice lowering to what he probably thought was a whisper but wasn't. You know what we mean. You're a partner now. You're pulling in serious money. You've got that corner office and the respect of the entire firm. Don't you think it's time for an adjustment? Her blood turned to ice water. They were talking about her right in front of her, like she wasn't even there. Guys, Marcus said, but there was no conviction in his voice. No anger, no defense of the woman he'd promised to love and honor. I mean, look around this place, Ryan said, gesturing broadly at the luxury resort filled with wealthy couples. Look at the caliber of women here. Don't you want someone who fits? Someone who can hold her own at client dinners and charity galas? She stared at Marcus, waiting for him to tell them to stop. Waiting for him to defend her. Waiting for him to remember the vows they'd exchanged 3 years ago, when he'd promised to love her for better or worse, for richer or poorer. Instead, Marcus drained his cocktail and set the glass down with a sharp clink. You know what? He said, his voice growing stronger with each word. You're right. The resort noise faded to a dull buzz. Her heart stopped beating. The world tilted sideways. Marcus. Her voice came out as barely a whisper. He turned to look at her then, and she saw a stranger. The warmth she'd fallen in love with was gone, replaced by something cold and calculating. His dark brown eyes, the ones she'd once lost herself in, looked at her like she was something distasteful he'd found on the bottom of his shoe. Hazel, this isn't working anymore. What? What do you mean? The 3 men leaned back in their chairs like they were settling in to watch a show. Jake actually smiled. I mean us. This. Marcus gestured vaguely between them. I'm moving up in the world, and I need someone who can move up with me. Someone who fits the image I'm trying to create. Image. She felt like she was drowning in the warm tropical air. Marcus, I don't understand. What image? What are you talking about? Look, Hazel. He sighed like this conversation was tedious, like dissolving their marriage was just another item on his to-do list. You're a nice woman. You're adequate, but let's be honest here. The word adequate hit her like a physical blow. Let's be honest about what? Marcus looked around the table at his colleagues, who were all nodding encouragingly. Drawing strength from their approval, he sat up straighter and looked her directly in the eyes. You're not smart enough for where I'm going in life. The words hung in the tropical air like smoke. She felt every guest at nearby tables turn to look at them, felt their pity and curiosity burning into her skin. Marcus, please don't do this. Not here. Not like this. When would be a good time, Hazel? When would be the right time to tell you that you're just not enough? Trevor snorted. Damn, dude. Harsh but necessary. Jake added. Sometimes you have to be cruel to be kind. You want to know the truth? Marcus continued, his voice getting louder. Other resort guests were definitely staring now. The truth is that I've been embarrassed to be seen with you for months. My colleagues ask about my wife, and I make excuses not to bring you to firm events because you don't fit. You don't belong in my world. Each word was a knife between her ribs. She gripped the edge of the table so hard her knuckles turned white. Marcus, stop. Please. You work in a hospital dealing with blood and chaos all day. You drive a Honda that's older than some of our interns. You shop at Target and think Applebee's is fine dining. And you? He paused, looking her up and down with disgust. You're just not intelligent enough to make any of that worth overlooking. Ryan whistled low. Jesus, Marcus. What? She needs to hear this. She needs to understand reality. She felt tears threatening, but she refused to cry in front of them. She refused to give them that satisfaction. So that's it, she managed to ask. 3 years of marriage, and that's it. 3 years too long, Marcus said, standing up and pulling out his wallet. He threw a $100 bill on the table. That should cover my drinks. You can handle the rest, right? Consider it a farewell gift. The resort bill for their week-long stay was over $15,000. She was a trauma nurse, not a brain surgeon. $15,000 was more than she made in a month after taxes. You'll figure it out, he said, already signaling for the resort manager. You always do. I'll be checking out tonight and flying back to Chicago with the guys. You can catch a commercial flight whenever you can afford it. His 3 colleagues stood up with him like a pack of hyenas following their leader. See you around, Hazel, Jake said with mock sympathy. Maybe. Good luck getting home, Trevor added with a laugh. They started walking toward the resort lobby, laughing and talking like they hadn't just destroyed a human being. Like they hadn't just taken 3 years of her life and thrown it in the garbage. But Marcus wasn't done yet. A woman like you should be grateful I married you at all. Most men wouldn't have bothered. The laughter that followed them into the resort echoed in her ears like gunshots. She sat there in the suddenly too quiet evening, surrounded by strangers offering pitying stares at her public humiliation. The resort manager approached cautiously, like she might bite. Mrs. Hartwell, will you be needing anything else this evening? Just some time to figure out the bill, she whispered. When he brought the itemized statement later that night, she stared at the total with numb disbelief. $15,247. 63, more than she had in her checking account, more than she could put on credit cards without maxing them out. She smiled then, not because she was happy, not because she was okay. She smiled because something inside her had broken. And when it broke, it revealed something she'd kept buried for a very long time. Something Marcus Hartwell had no idea existed. Something that was about to make his life very, very complicated. She paid a partial amount with her credit card to secure her room for another few days and walked to her overwater bungalow with her head held high. The ocean stretched endlessly around her, beautiful and isolating in equal measure. Marcus had left her stranded in paradise, probably thinking she'd spend days crying and begging for help. He had no idea who he'd just declared war on. Back in her bungalow, she kicked off the sandals that had been pinching her feet all evening and walked to the bathroom mirror. Imbecile, she said to her reflection. The woman staring back at her had auburn hair that caught the light like copper, green eyes that held more intelligence than Marcus could comprehend, and the kind of sharp features that belonged in boardrooms, not just hospitals. She wasn't a supermodel, but she'd never considered herself stupid. She'd graduated summa cum laude from Northwestern with a degree in biomedical engineering before choosing nursing school. She'd worked in trauma units in 3 different cities, had been published in medical journals, and had been offered administrative positions she'd turned down because she preferred direct patient care. She'd never considered herself adequate. She thought she was accomplished. But Marcus was right about one thing. She wasn't who she appeared to be. She walked to her suitcase and pulled out a laptop case she'd brought but hadn't planned to touch during their anniversary trip. Inside was a laptop that contained access to resources Marcus couldn't imagine. She opened it and logged into a bank account she hadn't accessed since she'd moved to Chicago and started over as just Hazel the nurse. Current balance: $847,392,156. 73. She scrolled through her portfolio. Tech stocks, real estate investments, municipal bonds, cryptocurrency holdings, all performing beautifully under the management of her financial advisors. Then she opened her other laptop, the one in a specially shielded case. The one with software that cost more than most people's houses. It was time to remember who she used to be. Her name was Hazel Wilson, and yes, she was a trauma nurse. The second domino fell 2 hours later when Ryan Mitchell was arrested at his apartment on charges of falsifying federal compliance reports and obstruction of justice. The news reported that he'd attempted to destroy evidence, but had been caught by surveillance teams that had been watching him for weeks. The third domino was Marcus himself. By Thursday afternoon, Federal marshals had arrested him at O'Hare Airport as he attempted to board a flight to the Cayman Islands with a suitcase full of cash and cryptocurrency hardware wallets. The financial news media had a field day. Chicago investment firm partners arrested in massive fraud scheme dominated headlines across every business publication. The details were damning. Insider trading using information obtained through personal connections, client funds diverted to personal accounts, falsified regulatory reports, and evidence of money laundering through offshore accounts. She was still in the Maldives when Marcus's desperate phone calls began coming in earnest. The first call came at 6 a.m. Chicago time, 3 p.m. in the Maldives. She was lounging by the resort pool, using Marcus's abandonment as an opportunity for an actual vacation. Hazel, thank God you answered. Marcus. She injected confusion into her voice. Why are you calling me? I thought you said we were getting divorced. Look, I know what I said at the resort was wrong. I was showing off for the guys. I was stressed about work. I didn't mean it. You seemed pretty clear about what you meant. Please, Hazel. I'm in serious trouble. Federal charges. They're talking about 20 years in prison. I need help. What kind of help? Legal help? Financial help? Both. I can't afford the kind of lawyer I need for federal charges. My assets are frozen, and the public defender they assigned looks like he graduated law school last week. She let silence stretch between them. Hazel, are you there? I'm here. I'm just confused about why you think I'd help you. You called me an imbecile, remember? You said I wasn't smart enough for your world. You said I should be grateful you married me at all. I was wrong. I was completely wrong. You're brilliant. You're amazing. And I was an idiot to treat you like that. So you want me back? Yes. Yes, absolutely. We can work this out. She hung up. He called back immediately. She let it go to voicemail. Hazel, please don't hang up on me. I love you. I know I have a terrible way of showing it, but I love you. Please call me back. I need you. The second call came 4 hours later. Hazel, something really weird is happening. It's not just me. Jake, Trevor, Ryan, we're all facing federal charges. All at the same time. It's like someone orchestrated this. Someone with serious resources. That was interesting. Marcus was proving more perceptive than she'd expected. That does sound strange, she said carefully. I mean, what are the odds? Exactly. Look, I know this sounds paranoid, but I think someone is targeting us. Someone with the kind of power to coordinate federal investigations. Like who? I don't know. A competitor maybe, or someone we inadvertently crossed. But Hazel, I can't think of anyone with that kind of influence. But he was getting closer to the truth than she'd expected. Marcus was arrogant and cruel, but he wasn't completely stupid. Marcus, I think you're being paranoid. Sometimes people's crimes just catch up with them. All at once. All of us. Come on, Hazel. You see patterns in trauma cases all the time. Doesn't this seem orchestrated to you? I think you're looking for someone to blame for your own bad choices. Bad choices? Hazel, I didn't choose to have federal agents raid my office. Someone tipped them off. Someone with detailed knowledge of our operations. Maybe you weren't as careful as you thought. There was a long pause. You know what? You're right. I made mistakes and now I'm paying for them. But that doesn't change the fact that I need help. And you're the only person I trust. The only person you trust? Really? Yes. You're the only person who ever loved me for me, not for what I could give them. The irony was so thick, she could have cut it with a knife. What exactly do you want from me, Marcus? A loan. Just enough to hire a federal defense attorney. I'll pay you back as soon as this is resolved. How much? $200,000. She almost laughed. $200,000. She made that much in investment interest every few hours. Marcus, I'm a trauma nurse. Where would I get $200,000? My family doesn't have that kind of money, and we don't own a house, remember? We rented because you said buying was a bad investment. Then what about a smaller amount? 50,000, 20,000, anything would help. She pretended to consider this. I might be able to scrape together 10,000 from my retirement savings. But Marcus, after what you said to me, after how you treated me, why should I help you? Because you're a good person. Because you save lives every day. Because somewhere deep down, you still love me. He was right about one thing. She did still feel something for him. She felt satisfaction watching him squirm. I need time to think about it. How much time? A few days. Hazel, I don't have a few days. My hearing is Monday. Then you'll have a public defender. Lots of people get by with public defenders. Lots of people go to federal prison with public defenders. Maybe you should have thought of that before you started stealing from your clients. The silence stretched so long she thought he'd hung up. Hazel, do you hate me? Such a simple question. Such a complicated answer. No, Marcus, I don't hate you. It was mostly the truth. Hate was too small an emotion for what she felt. Hate was what you felt for someone who'd hurt you, but was still on your level. What she felt for Marcus Hartwell was something much more dangerous. She felt nothing. He was a problem to be solved, an equation to be balanced, a stain to be cleaned up. Thank you, he whispered. I'll call you tomorrow. Sure. After she hung up, she transferred $20,000 from one of her investment accounts to her regular checking account. Not because she was going to give it to Marcus, but because she wanted him to see exactly how much she was worth when the time came to reveal the truth. The third call came on Saturday, and Marcus sounded different. Desperate and paranoid. Hazel, I've been thinking about what I said. About someone targeting us. I think I know who it is. Her blood turned to ice water. Who? Your family. What? Think about it. You told me your family had some money, right? What if they found out what I said to you? What if they decided to teach me a lesson? She almost admired his intuition. He was completely wrong about the details, but he'd grasped the essential truth. Someone with resources was systematically destroying his life. Marcus, my family doesn't have the kind of money or connections to coordinate federal investigations. Are you sure? I mean, really sure? Because the timing is too perfect. I humiliate you publicly in the worst possible way, and then within days, my entire world falls apart. That's quite an ego you have there. You think my family cares enough about me to launch some kind of federal conspiracy? The question hung in the humid resort air like a blade. They'd have to be incredibly wealthy and well-connected to pull something like this off. Marcus, you're being paranoid. My family has enough money to be comfortable, but they're not running shadow operations with federal agencies. Then explain it. Explain how 4 successful guys all get arrested on federal charges in the same week. You weren't that successful, she said quietly. You just pretended to be. What's that supposed to mean? It means maybe the universe is just correcting an imbalance. Maybe you all got away with crimes for too long, and now the bill is coming due. That's not how the world works, Hazel, isn't it? The fourth call came on Sunday morning at 4 a.m. Chicago time. She was awake anyway, sitting on her deck with a cup of coffee, watching the sunrise over the Indian Ocean and thinking about justice. Hazel. Marcus's voice was raw, broken. I'm sorry. I'm so fucking sorry. What happened? My lawyer quit. The case is too high profile, and he doesn't want to be associated with it. The government is talking about seizing everything. The condo, the cars, my investment accounts. They're saying I could get 25 years in federal prison. I'm sorry to hear that. Are you? Are you really sorry? Because sometimes I wonder if you're happy about this. She took a slow sip of her coffee and watched a school of tropical fish swim beneath her deck. Why would I be happy about this? Because of what I said to you. Because I hurt you. Marcus, I'm not the kind of person who takes pleasure in other people's suffering. It was mostly true. She didn't take pleasure in suffering in general. Just his suffering. Just the suffering of men who thought they could crush other people without consequences. I know you're not. That's why I'm calling. That's why I need you to help me. I told you I need time to think about the loan. Not the loan. Something else. What? I need you to be a character witness. The request hit her like a physical blow. What? At my sentencing hearing. I need people to testify that I'm not a bad person, that I made mistakes, but I don't deserve to spend the rest of my life in prison. You knew me better than anyone. If you could just tell them about the good times we had, about how I was when we were alone. Marcus, please. I know I don't deserve your help. I know I was cruel and stupid and wrong about everything. But Hazel, if you could see me now, I'm broken. I'm completely broken. She could hear it in his voice. The arrogance was gone. The confidence was gone. The casual cruelty that had let him humiliate her publicly was gone. All that was left was fear and desperation. It was the most beautiful sound she'd ever heard. I'll think about it, she said. Really? Really? Thank you. Thank you so much, Hazel. I promise you, if you help me get through this, I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you. I'll be the husband you deserved from the beginning. After she hung up, she sat in her overwater bungalow and smiled. Marcus Hartwell thought he was manipulating her. He thought he could use her kindness, her love, her forgiving nature to save himself from the consequences of his own actions. He had no idea that the kind, forgiving Hazel Hartwell he'd married had died at the Sunset Beach Bar 4 days ago. In her place was someone much more interesting, someone who understood that mercy was a luxury only the powerful could afford to give, and she was feeling anything but generous. The courthouse in Chicago was exactly what she'd expected: imposing gray stone, high ceilings, and the kind of institutional lighting that made everyone look guilty. She sat in the back row of the courtroom, wearing a simple navy dress and her most innocent expression. It had taken her 3 days to fly back from the Maldives, during which time Marcus had been denied bail and was sitting in federal detention. His expensive suits were gone, replaced by an orange jumpsuit that made him look like exactly what he was: a common criminal. When the judge called for character witnesses, she stood up. "Your Honor, I'd like to speak on behalf of the defendant." Marcus's head whipped around, and the relief that flooded his face was almost painful to watch. He mouthed "thank you" at her, his eyes bright with unshed tears. She walked to the witness stand with measured steps, placed her hand on the Bible, and swore to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. "State your name and relationship to the defendant," the judge instructed. "My name is Hazel Hartwell. Marcus Hartwell is my husband." "Is not was. We're currently separated, Your Honor. The divorce proceedings are ongoing." "I see. And despite this separation, you're here to speak on his behalf?" "I'm here to tell the truth about Marcus Hartwell's character." "Please proceed." She looked directly at Marcus, who was watching her with desperate hope. "Your Honor, I was married to Marcus Hartwell for 3 years, and I thought I knew him well. He could be charming, successful, and attentive when he wanted to be. He took me to nice restaurants, planned romantic trips, and told me he loved me." Marcus nodded encouragingly. "However," she continued, "I also saw another side of Marcus Hartwell, a side that I think is directly relevant to these proceedings." The hope in Marcus's eyes flickered. "What kind of side, Mrs. Hartwell?" "Marcus has a fundamental problem with honesty, Your Honor. Not just in his professional life, as we've seen with these charges, but in his personal relationships as well." Marcus's lawyers started to object, but she continued. "He lied to me constantly about his business practices. When I mentioned information I'd learned as a member of our hospital's board of directors, he never told me he was using that information for illegal stock trades. He led me to believe he was successful through legitimate means while he was actually stealing from his clients." "Objection," Marcus's lawyer called out. "Sustained," the judge said. "Mrs. Hartwell, please stick to your personal observations of the defendant's character." "Of course, Your Honor. What I observed was a pattern of deception and manipulation that extended far beyond his professional life. 4 days ago, on what was supposed to be our 3rd wedding anniversary, Marcus abandoned me at a luxury resort in the Maldives." The courtroom was dead silent. "Can you elaborate on these circumstances?" "We were having dinner when some of his colleagues appeared. In front of these men and in front of a resort full of strangers, Marcus told me I was too stupid for his social circle, that I was an embarrassment to his career, and that I should be grateful he'd married me at all. He then left me stranded at the resort with a $15,000 bill and no way to get home." Several people in the courtroom gasped. "This happened 4 days ago?" "Yes, Your Honor. The same day the federal investigation into his crimes became public. And yet you're here today to speak on his behalf." "I'm here today to tell the truth about Marcus Hartwell's character. The truth is that he's a man who believes rules don't apply to him, whether those rules involve federal securities law or basic human decency. He called me after his arrest, not because he was sorry for how he treated me, but because he needed my help paying for his legal defense." Marcus was staring at her like she'd grown a second head. "He asked me to liquidate my retirement savings to fund his defense, and when I said I needed to think about it, he suggested I was being selfish for not immediately sacrificing my financial security for his benefit." She turned to look directly at Marcus. "Your Honor, I don't believe Marcus is evil, but I do believe he's narcissistic, manipulative, and completely incapable of accepting responsibility for his actions. These federal charges don't surprise me at all. They're exactly the kind of thing someone would do if they believed the world owed them a lifestyle they hadn't legitimately earned." The judge was writing notes, nodding slowly. "Is there anything else you'd like to add, Mrs. Hartwell?" "Just this, Your Honor. Marcus asked me to come here today because he thought I still loved him, and he thought love would make me lie for him. He thought I was weak and grateful and easily manipulated. He was wrong about all of those things, just like he was wrong when he thought he could steal millions of dollars without getting caught." She stood up from the witness stand. Marcus Hartwell isn't a victim of overzealous prosecutors or bad timing. He's a man who made deliberate choices to lie, steal, and hurt other people. And now he's facing the consequences of those choices. In my opinion, those consequences are long overdue. The silence that followed her testimony was deafening. She walked back to her seat, feeling every eye in the courtroom on her. Marcus's lawyer was frantically whispering in his ear, but Marcus wasn't listening. He was staring at her like he was seeing her for the first time. When the judge announced a recess, Marcus broke away from his lawyer and approached her in the hallway, flanked by federal marshals. "What the hell was that?" he demanded. "That was the truth." "The truth? Hazel, you just destroyed any chance I had of leniency." "Did I? I thought I was being a character witness." "I witnessed your character, and I shared what I saw." "You vindictive bitch. I can't believe I ever thought I loved you." She smiled. "There's the Marcus I know. For a while there, with all the begging and crying, I thought federal prison had changed you already. You think this is funny? I think justice is beautiful." Marcus grabbed her arm, his fingers digging into her skin. The marshals moved forward, but she waved them off. "You have no idea who you're messing with," he snarled. "Don't I?" Something in her voice made him loosen his grip. "You want to know something interesting, Marcus? You were right when you said someone was targeting you and your friends. Someone with resources, someone with connections, someone who could orchestrate the kind of systematic destruction you've all experienced." His eyes widened. "You were just wrong about who it was." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that adequate little Hazel Hartwell, the stupid trauma nurse who should have been grateful for your attention, isn't quite what she appears to be." Marcus's face cycled through confusion, fear, and finally terrible understanding. "It was you." "Of course it was me. But how?" "Don't I?" She pulled out her phone and showed him her banking app. The screen displayed a balance that made his stolen millions look like pocket change. "My name is Hazel Hartwell now, Marcus. But my maiden name was Blackstone. As in Blackstone Industries. As in the tech company worth about $18 billion. As in the inheritance I've been managing very successfully for the past 5 years while pretending to be a simple nurse." Marcus's legs gave out. He slumped against the courthouse wall, staring at her like she was a ghost. You're rich. I'm wealthy beyond your comprehension, Marcus. I could have bought your entire investment firm without noticing the expense. I could have paid your legal fees with what I make in interest every day. I could have made all your problems disappear with a single phone call. Then why didn't you? Because you called me an imbecile in front of a resort full of people and abandoned me in a foreign country. The simplicity of it seemed to break something in his brain. That's it. That's why you destroyed my life. Because I was mean to you on vacation? You humiliated me publicly because you thought I was powerless. You were wrong. Hazel, please. If you have all that money, if you have all that power, you can fix this. You can make this go away. Please, I'm begging you." "Why would I do that?" Because you loved me once. Because somewhere inside, the woman who loved me is still there." She studied his face, taking in the desperation, the fear, the complete collapse of everything he thought he knew about the world. "You're right," she said finally. "The woman who loved you is still here." Hope flashed across his features. "But she died at the Sunset Beach Bar 4 days ago when the man she trusted with her heart decided to destroy her in front of strangers for the entertainment of his colleagues. The woman standing in front of you now is someone else entirely. Someone who understands that mercy is a luxury and forgiveness is a gift that has to be earned. What do you want? Tell me what you want and I'll do it. I want you to go to federal prison, Marcus. I want you to have 20 years to think about what it feels like when someone more powerful than you decides you're disposable. You can't be serious." "I'm completely serious. But don't worry, I'm not completely heartless. I've arranged for you to have the best possible experience while you're incarcerated." "What does that mean?" "It means I made some donations to the federal prison system. Donations that will ensure you have a private cell, good medical care, access to educational programs, and protection from the more dangerous inmates." Marcus stared at her in horror. "You're going to let me go to prison, but you're going to make sure I'm comfortable while I'm there. I told you I'm not evil. I just want you to have time to think." "Think about what?" "Think about how it feels to be powerless. Think about how it feels when someone you trust betrays you. Think about how it feels to be dismissed and discarded by someone who thinks they're better than you." The bailiff announced that court was resuming. "I have to go," she said. "Good luck with your sentencing, Marcus." As she walked away, she heard him calling after her. "Hazel, Hazel, wait. We can work this out. But she was already gone. Marcus Hartwell was sentenced to 22 years in federal prison. She wasn't in the courtroom when it happened. She was at work, helping Dr. Martinez stabilize a car accident victim whose injuries reminded her why she'd chosen nursing in the first place. But Victoria sent her a text with the news. Package delivered. Target acquired. Mission accomplished. That evening, she sat in her Chicago apartment with a glass of wine and reflected on the past week. For men who'd thought they were untouchable had learned otherwise. For men who'd believed they could humiliate someone without consequences had discovered they were wrong. But she wasn't done yet. 8 months into Marcus's sentence, she received a letter. It was handwritten on federal prison stationery, and her name was written in careful block letters on the envelope. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I needed to write this letter. I've had a lot of time to think about what happened, about what I did, and about who you really are. You were right about everything. I was selfish, cruel, and completely blind to what I had. I treated you terribly because I thought you couldn't fight back. I thought you were weak, dependent, and grateful. I was wrong about all of it. I've been thinking about something you said in the courthouse hallway. You said the woman who loved me died at the Sunset Beach bar. I think you're wrong about that. I think that woman was never really there at all. I think you've been playing a game since the day we met, and I was too stupid to realize it. I think you've been watching me, studying me, waiting for me to show you who I really was. And when I finally did, when I revealed exactly how shallow and cruel I could be, you decided it was time to end the game. I don't blame you for that. I would have done the same thing if I were smart enough and powerful enough to pull it off. What I can't figure out is why you married me in the first place. With your money, your resources, your intelligence, you could have had anyone. Why me? Why waste 3 years on someone like me? I think it's because you were lonely. I think being that rich, that powerful, makes it impossible to trust anyone. Everyone wants something from you. Everyone has an angle. So you tried an experiment. You pretended to be someone ordinary to see if you could find someone who would love you for who you were, not what you could give them. The experiment failed. I failed. I'm sorry for that, Hazel. Not just sorry I got caught. Not just sorry I'm in prison, but truly sorry that I proved you can't trust anyone. Sorry that I took your hope and crushed it in front of a resort full of strangers. You probably won't believe this, but I did love you. Not the real you. I never knew the real you. But I loved the woman you pretended to be. I loved your kindness, your dedication to helping people, your laugh when you watched old movies. I loved how excited you got about small things, and how you cried during commercials with dogs. I just loved all of that less than I loved impressing my colleagues. I don't know if the real Hazel Blackstone has any of those qualities or if they were all part of the performance. But if they were real, if any part of the woman I fell in love with was real, then I'm sorry I wasn't good enough for her. I'm not writing this to ask for forgiveness. I'm not writing this to ask you to get me out early. I know I deserve to be here, and honestly, prison is probably the safest place for me right now. Jake is in the cell next to mine, and Trevor is 2 blocks over. Ryan got out after 18 months. But from what I hear, losing his compliance license was the least of his problems. Funny how many people have grudges against someone who falsified federal reports. I'm writing this because I want you to know that your experiment wasn't a complete failure. I did love you as much as someone like me is capable of loving anyone. And I think somewhere under all that anger and calculation, you loved me too. Maybe that's enough. Maybe that's more than either of us expected to get. I hope you find someone worthy of the real you, whoever that is. I hope you find someone who sees your wealth and your power and your intelligence and still loves the woman who rescues stray cats and cries at movies. I hope you're happy, Hazel. You deserve happiness more than anyone I've ever known. Thank you for the private cell and the protection. You didn't have to do that. The fact that you did tells me that the kind woman I fell in love with was real, at least partly. That means something to me. She read the letter 3 times, then walked to her kitchen and poured herself another glass of wine. Marcus Hartwell was more perceptive than she'd given him credit for. He'd understood things about her that she'd barely understood herself. He was right about the experiment. She had been testing him, testing whether genuine love was possible when money and power were removed from the equation. He was right about the loneliness too. When you can buy anything, when you can solve any problem with a phone call, when people's entire demeanor changes once they learn your net worth, it becomes impossible to know who actually cares about you. But he was wrong about one thing. The woman he'd fallen in love with wasn't a performance. She was real. She'd been real when she'd nursed him through food poisoning, real when she'd laughed at his terrible jokes, real when she'd fallen asleep in his arms watching old movies. She'd been real right up until the moment he'd called her an imbecile in front of a resort full of strangers. Now she was gone, and in her place was someone harder, smarter, and infinitely more dangerous. She walked to her laptop and opened her secure messaging system. Victoria, I need you to arrange something for me. What do you need? Marcus Hartwell's sentence. I want it reduced to time served. There was a long pause before Victoria responded. Are you sure about that? He's only been in 8 months. You went to a lot of trouble to put him there. I'm sure. Can you make it happen? Of course. Any particular reason? He passed the test. What test? The final exam. I don't understand. She stared at Marcus's letter, at his careful handwriting, at words that had cost him something to write. He figured out who I really am, Victoria. Not just the money, not just the power, but the person underneath. And he's genuinely sorry for what he did. Not because he got caught, but because he hurt someone he loved. So you're going to forgive him? I'm going to free him. There's a difference. Make the arrangements. Marcus Hartwell has learned his lesson. 2 weeks later, she was restocking medical supplies in the trauma unit when Emma burst through the doors with a familiar look of excitement. Hazel, guess who I saw at the coffee shop this morning? She didn't have to guess. She'd been expecting this conversation for days. Marcus Hartwell. Emma's face fell. How did you know? Lucky guess. How did he look? Honestly, terrible. I mean, not terrible, but different. Older. Sadder. Broken, maybe. He asked about you. What did you tell him? I told him you were doing great, that you'd been promoted to head trauma nurse, and that you were seeing someone new. 2 out of 3 were true. She had been promoted, and she was doing great. The dating part was a fiction she'd asked Emma to maintain. What did he say? He said he was glad you were happy. And then he asked me to give you something. Emma pulled an envelope from her pocket. Her name was written across it in the same careful block letters she remembered from his prison letter. Did he say anything else? He said to tell you that he understood why you did what you did, and that he hoped someday you might forgive him enough to read what he wrote. She took the envelope but didn't open it. Emma, what do you think I should do about Marcus? Honestly, Hazel, I think you should stay as far away from him as possible. I don't care how sorry he is or how much prison changed him. What he did to you was unforgivable. And if he really has changed, then good for him. He can go change for someone else. That evening, she sat in her apartment with the envelope in her hands. Outside her window, Chicago stretched endlessly, beautiful and complex and full of possibilities. Inside, she was anything but settled. Finally, she opened it. I'm not supposed to contact you. I'm sure you could have me arrested for harassment, and honestly, I wouldn't blame you. But there are things I need to say, and I'm hoping you'll give me the chance to say them. I know what you did. I know you arranged for my early release, just like I know you arranged for my comfortable stay in prison. I know because the same lawyer who told me about my sentence reduction also told me that an anonymous benefactor had been covering his fees. Anonymous benefactor, right? I want you to know that I don't expect anything from you. I'm not writing this to ask for a second chance or to beg for forgiveness or to try to win you back. I know that ship sailed a long time ago, and it's not coming back to shore. I'm writing this to say thank you. Thank you for showing me who I really was. Thank you for holding up a mirror and forcing me to look at the ugly, selfish, cruel person I'd become. Thank you for teaching me that actions have consequences, even for people who think they're too smart or too successful to get caught. Most of all, thank you for showing me mercy when you had every reason not to. I spent 8 months in federal prison thinking about what you said in the courthouse. You said the woman who loved me died at the Sunset Beach bar. Maybe that's true, but if she's gone, I'm the one who killed her, and I have to live with that for the rest of my life. I'm different now, Hazel. Prison changes you, but more than that, understanding what I lost changes you. I know I can't prove that to you with a letter, and I'm not asking for the chance to prove it in person. I'm just telling you because I think you deserve to know. I'm working at a nonprofit now, helping people who are struggling with debt and financial fraud. It doesn't pay much, but it feels good to use my financial skills to help people instead of taking advantage of them. It feels good to wake up in the morning knowing I'm going to make someone's life better instead of worse. I'm also going to therapy twice a week. Dr. Rodriguez says I have narcissistic tendencies and an unhealthy need for external validation. She says it's going to take years of work to unlearn the patterns I've spent my whole life developing. I'm willing to do the work. I know none of this matters to you. I know you've moved on with your life, found someone who deserves the amazing woman you are. But I needed you to know that your experiment wasn't a complete failure. You wanted to find out if someone could love the real you. The answer is yes, I did love you, Hazel. Not perfectly, not unselfishly, but genuinely. The problem wasn't that you're unlovable. The problem was that I wasn't worthy of loving you. Maybe someday I will be. Not for you. I know that chance is gone, but for someone else. Someone who won't make the mistakes I made. Thank you for everything, Hazel. Thank you for loving me when I didn't deserve it. Thank you for punishing me when I needed it. And thank you for freeing me when I'd learned from it. I hope your life is everything you want it to be. She set the letter down and walked to her window. The city was still vibrant, still full of possibilities, still beautiful. But something had changed inside her. For the first time in almost a year, she felt lighter, like a weight she'd been carrying had finally been lifted. Marcus Hartwell had hurt her, humiliated her, and betrayed her. But he'd also learned from it, grown from it, and become a better person because of it. Maybe that was enough. Maybe that was more than she'd expected when this whole thing started. She picked up her phone and typed a text message. Marcus, I got your letter. I'm proud of the work you're doing, and I'm glad you're getting help. You're right that we can't go back, but I want you to know that I forgive you. Not for your sake, but for mine. Carrying anger is exhausting, and I'm tired of being angry. Be well, Hazel. She hit send before she could change her mind. His response came back within minutes. Thank you. That means more to me than you'll ever know. She deleted his number from her phone, then walked to her closet and pulled out a garment bag she hadn't touched in over a year. Inside were the expensive clothes, the designer jewelry, the symbols of a life she'd left behind when she decided to play at being normal. But she wasn't normal. She never had been. She was Hazel Blackstone, daughter of a tech mogul, heir to a billion-dollar fortune, and one of the most powerful women in the country. It was time to stop pretending to be someone else. It was time to go home. The next Monday, she walked into her supervisor's office and submitted her resignation from the hospital. She told her she'd been offered an opportunity she couldn't turn down, which was true. She'd been offered the opportunity to stop hiding from who she really was. Emma cried when she told her she was leaving. Where are you going? She asked. Back to where I came from. Will I see you again? Of course. You're one of the few people who liked me when you thought I was nobody special. That makes you rarer than diamonds. You were never nobody special, Hazel. You saved lives every day. I know. And I'll keep saving lives, just differently. 1 week later, she stood in the executive boardroom of Blackstone Industries, wearing a tailored black suit that cost more than most people's cars. Around the table sat 12 of the most powerful executives in the tech industry, all waiting to hear what she had to say. Ladies and gentlemen, she began, my name is Hazel Blackstone, and for the past 5 years, I've been letting other people run my company while I figured out who I wanted to be. She clicked to the first slide of her presentation. I'm done figuring. It's time to get back to work. 6 months later, Blackstone Industries announced a revolutionary new healthcare initiative, a network of trauma centers that would provide free emergency care to anyone who needed it. Staffed by the best medical professionals in the world and funded by one of the largest endowments in history, the first center opened in Chicago. Emma was hired as the head nurse with a salary triple what she'd made at their old hospital. At the dedication ceremony, a reporter asked her why she'd chosen to focus on trauma care. Because trauma changes people, she said. Sometimes it breaks them. Sometimes it makes them stronger. And sometimes it shows them who they really are. I believe everyone deserves the chance to heal from their trauma and become who they're meant to be. Is this initiative personal for you, Miss Blackstone? She thought about Marcus Hartwell, probably helping someone struggling with financial problems at his nonprofit job. She thought about the letter he'd written, the genuine remorse in his words, the man he was trying to become. She thought about the woman she'd been when she'd fallen in love with him, and the woman she'd become when he'd betrayed her. All healing is personal, she said. We're all walking around with wounds, some visible and some hidden. The question isn't whether we'll be hurt. We will be. The question is what we choose to do with that hurt. And what did you choose to do with yours? She smiled at the camera, and for the first time in years, the smile reached her eyes. I chose to use it to help other people heal theirs. Later that night, alone in her penthouse apartment overlooking the Chicago skyline, she received a text from an unknown number. Saw the news about your trauma centers. Incredible work. The world is lucky to have you. She stared at the message for a long time, then typed back, the world is lucky to have people willing to do better. Keep doing the work, Marcus. It matters. Then she deleted the conversation and blocked the number. Some chapters of your life end with reconciliation. Some end with revenge. This one ended with something rarer, redemption. Not just for him, but for her too. Because the truth was, Marcus Hartwell hadn't just shown her who he really was that night at the Sunset Beach Bar. He'd shown her who she really was too. She was someone who could love deeply, who could be hurt profoundly, and who could choose justice over vengeance when it mattered most. She was someone who could use power responsibly, who could turn pain into purpose, and who could build something beautiful from the ashes of betrayal. She was Hazel Blackstone, and she was finally ready to be herself.